All right.
Okay, on your new book, Citizen Perot, what made you choose the title that relates to Citizen Kane? What's the relation to that?
It's not actually Citizen Kane that I chose. It's the French Revolution, believe it or not, a bit older in history, at a time when in the French Revolution royalty was thrown out and the new people who took over the government were called citizen. Everybody had that title. And after a while they became quite powerful in their own rights. That's how I view Perot, just a normal citizen, comma, with $3 billion who has a lot of power when he wants to wield it.
People would
Do you want me to look, by the way, at you or at the camera?
Either one, whatever.
I'll look at you. It's more comfortable looking.
Yeah, okay. So there's no play on Citizen Kane? It's
No, there's no play on Citizen Kane. I meant in an older historical perspective. Most people will probably forget that, think only of Citizen Kane and think that that's what it relates to, but it doesn't for me.
Why do you think Perot eventually decided to cooperate with the project?
My personal belief is that he knew last year he was running for the presidency, and I was a potential fly in the ointment. Here was a book being done about him that was going to be done. Serious journalist, large publishing house, comprehensive look at his life. Does he stand on the sidelines and let it come out, or does he get involved and try to have a good effect on it? And that's what he did.
Have you had any feedback from him or from the Reform Party about the content of the book? How do they receive the book?
Some Reform Party people told me they didn't like it all. They thought it was much too harsh. He's spoken to me in 4 conversations since, and he said, Gerald, I've been too busy to read it. That's his official position.
Do you think that your book will make people think twice about voting for Trump?
I think it may. I think that he's a patriotic American who's competitive and disciplined and has a lot going for him. Still has something to do in serving this country. I don't know if it's in sitting in the White House because, as I show in the book, he may have been a CEO for far too long, and that's not what fits best, I think, in Washington.
That kind of leads into my next question. You think that Ross Perot, in your humble opinion, would make a good president?
What worries me about him, what I've discovered in the book, is one of his strengths is this ability to cut to an issue without, sort of based on his own intuition, without really using much consensus or compromise or group of advisors or delegating. And that may work very well in the business world. I don't think it works as well in Washington, where it could lead to gridlock.
No, I've started reading your book. I've read the first couple chapters so far, and I kind of get the impression that perhaps your take is that sometimes his advisors are not giving him very good advice, or he may be gullible and he may accept things that are not necessarily true.
Yeah, it's not that his advisors don't give him good advice, because he really doesn't listen to advisors that much. He really does his own advice, but he will occasionally, somebody will get his ear, as they did in '92 on the question of dirty tricks, who may be less than a reputable source, and for some reason he believes them.
Do you think he has a tendency to believe conspiracy sort of?
I have found that he, a number of times in his life, and you see it as well in '92, that he will sometimes believe a conspiracy is brewing and is directed against him.
Yeah, I visited your website, and I read some of the early stuff about this book before I actually got a copy of it. And it talks about your previous book, Case Closed, being controversial. How do you see your previous book, the controversy around it?
Well, I guess the controversy was, I underestimated the controversy. I never thought the most controversial position to have on the Kennedy assassination was that Oswald did it. I now find out if you say that, people say, what, you're kidding? You must be absolutely crazy. How can you possibly say that? So after 30 years, I did not realize how much the so-called official conclusion was in doubt.
Do you know that if your book affected the percentage of polls of people that believe in conspiracy or not?
I don't know. I've never seen it done in terms of a poll. I don't think a book can have, my feeling is a book cannot have an effect on mass public opinion, because in the end, if you sell 100,000 or 200,000 books as a major best-selling author, it's still such a small number of people, whereas a film like Oliver Stone's JFK will be seen by 20 million people. What I think the book did do is affect the opinion of the opinion makers. Dan Rather, Time, who said after Case Closed, we all think it's Oswald alone. PBS, which did its Frontline program. Newsweek, which did its story. U.S. News and World Report, which did its cover story based upon it. Those opinion makers were affected by the book. Maybe over years, that filters down into the population.
People accuse you of being sort of a propaganda asset?
Absolutely. Oh, no, I was astonished. The last thing I expected is that you could say Oswald did it alone, and the next thing you know, you'd be accused of being a CIA dupe. You must work for the FBI. You're an absolute patsy. You're either an idiot or otherwise you're really working for the government. I don't mind if somebody disagrees with me. It's what makes the country great, and point out the evidence that you don't agree with, and we can sit down and debate it all day long. I am surprised if somebody believes that Stalin was a strong leader. I don't necessarily think they were immediately a communist or a dupe of the Trotsky end of the party. So I was surprised to see those rather wild allegations.
Do you entertain any possibility, 1 or 2%, that maybe Oswald did have conspirators in some way?
I know, I really don't, and that's why the only way you can do a book called Case Closed, I can assure you, I would have had a question mark at the end of the closed if I still had that 1 or 2% of doubt. And I think that's why a journalist had not done that book before, because too many people were afraid of putting their professional reputation on the line. There were journalists, Cy Hirsch, others, who had looked into the Kennedy assassination. If you do a book that says Case Closed, it's Oswald alone, if there's a conspiracy, you look pretty foolish.
I've also seen on the net a bit of a controversy about your research for that book, and there are people challenging you about witnesses that you may or may have not interviewed. And there's the idea that you should come forth with your research and deposit it somewhere for them to look at. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, there isn't anybody that I was ever supposed to have interviewed that I did not interview. Everybody in the book was actually interviewed. And it's one of those issues that has a life of its own once it gets going. The classic case is a researcher calls up a person in Dallas, Tague, who had been injured at the site of Dealey Plaza. And they said, did this guy Posner ever talk to you? Not that I know of, he says. Meanwhile, I have 2 conversations with him, both on tape. Same thing happens to Dr. Boswell. I don't remember talking to him. Again, I have tape conversations with them. So the wonders, but those, of course, keep getting spread around all the time. I will deposit my research one day with the university or library, as I will for all of my books, but at my discretion and at my timing, not at sort of the prompting of people who believe for political reasons they can keep accusing me.
So you haven't decided where or when yet?
Absolutely. The Mengele work will be deposited as well. All my work on Nazis, the work on triads, and the work on heroin. The decision I have to make is whether to deposit all of the material together in sort of what I view as a Posner collection, so that you can go in and find everything out about the books at once, or whether I should give some to the Holocaust Museum, wants the Mengele and the Hitler's research material separately, but obviously would not be interested in the material on Perot, the Kennedy assassination, or Warlords of Crime.
Now, apparently the Assassination Records and Review Board interviewed Humes and Boswell recently. Have they contacted you to check that story, that controversy at all?
No, they have not.
No? I guess that's it.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.